Doing it through your life.
Well, good morning. Thank you for joining us here at the San Luis listening session for housing. I'm Willa Williford, and I'm a consultant based in the Gunnison Valley, and I've been working with Don Malgaris for almost a year now on the Valley-wide study, and now getting into specific communities around the housing needs and needs, gaps, and what do we want to do about it. So today's meeting is all about, well, it's mostly about hearing from you and helping us make sure we're on the right track with our current draft. And so we'll be sharing some information and then mostly having a discussion. So I'd love to begin, well, why don't we just go through our next couple of slides. So we're going to review the San Luis Valley needs assessment, share some metrics about your community, and then discuss our vision and opportunities. And how we've broken that out timing wise is just we'd love to hear from everyone who's on the phone and in the room, kind of, who you are and why housing is important to you. Then we'll all present for a little bit just to set the baseline of the information. And then we can have our group discussions on sort of three major areas that we were hoping to get feedback. Wrap up and have you out of here by 11:30. So let's do introductions. And why don't I just hand it to my left in the room, and then we'll do the people on the phone once we've been around the room.
Well, my name is Jeremy Elliott. I'm the Executive Director of the Costilla County Economic Development Council, and also on the Board of Directors for the San Luis Valley Housing Coalition. And yeah, my involvement with housing is economic development and housing go hand in hand. And we're definitely seeing in this area the lack of housing is causing the lack of economic development here as well.
My name is Susan Sandiford. I'm the town manager of the town of San Luis. And we've been looking into the housing issue for over a year now. We did a Colorado housing charrette at the end of last year, and they came up with some really good ideas of how to move forward. We do have a lack of rentals. We have a lack of people being able to afford to buy a home because of the money. There's not a lot of money that's made here, or credit issues or those kind of things. So it's hard for a young couple to move up and build and that kind of thing. But there is a large rental problem, especially for the school teachers, places for them to live and those kind of things. So we do see the lack, but there's also a lot of housing in the CUVA that needs refurbishment. There's a lot of empty homes. There's a lot of empty lots, and most of those are owned by people outside the area that they don't want to let go of because it was owned by the family. Yet we really need to develop the CUVA to, start there instead of moving them out of that and it just becoming dilapidated. We want to start with refurbishing and renewing, that whole neighborhood, and finding a way to do that.
Toby Melser, I'm the superintendent of the school district here, and I don't know, somehow I got this flyer, and when I saw it, I thought this is a good thing to attend because, just as she said, we struggle getting teachers anyhow. And then when you talk to them and they say, okay, how about housing? And I tell them, well, it's a little limited. It becomes even harder. And if there's a way to be able to provide something sustainable and good housing for them, and the school district's willing to work with people and see what we can do. We got a lot of land, or even some of these houses. I just found out the other day that some of the federal funding supposedly might have a possibility of being used for housing. So our ESSER funds is what they call them. We might be able to use. So to gain a better insight, maybe where San Luis is headed with this and how the school can help or partner or possibly put in place some things that could help us get teachers too.
Awesome. Thank you. We're just doing introductions. I'm Willa, the consultant on the project, and we were just giving our name and kind of why housing is important to us. And there's also, it's a hybrid meeting, so there's people on the phone. So yeah, do you want to go and then?
Sure.
You guys.
My name's Tim Reinen. I'm here just as a guest today, but we have a follow-up meeting after this with Lupine Luna and the Lobatos to really try to focus on their strategy and vision of creating more housing, working directly and consulting directly through the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority.
I'm Dana Mestis. I'm a business owner on Main Street, and Jeff is a good friend, and he actually gave me a call yesterday and asked if I'd come to the meeting today, because I told him we were interested in doing an Airbnb above our gallery, and then we were actually looking at a piece of property in Cuba to do some apartments. So I kind of had mentioned that to him a long time ago, so he just invited me to the meeting. So
Wonderful. We're so glad you're here.
great.
Let's do on the Zoom, we'll start with Jan.
Hello, my name is Jan Miller, and I am with RMSCR, and we're just very grateful and blessed to participate in this meeting and the discussions to see how our agency can help further the cause and of your community and strengthen the housing market down there. Thanks.
Miriam?
Yes, hi, my name is Miriam Barella, and I'm the San Luis Valley Area Manager for RMSCR. And we have been collaborating with Jeremy as well as Tommy and Ben Dune, our agency. So we were invited, and like Jan mentioned, we're very blessed to be here and see where our agency can help the community.
Give us just a second. Our speaker on this end is having some issues.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hi.
Welcome.
Hi. Susan. Jeremy.
Yeah, where would you guys like to sit? We can do a second row, so you can explain. That works.
Okay, I think hopefully that worked. How about Eloise?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm Eloise Wenzel. I'm with RMSCR. And as my colleagues have said, we're guest listeners today, and we're very blessed to actually be invited and to be able to participate. We're here to try to get a very good understanding of what the housing needs are in San Luis and how we can collaborate with the community, supporting them in trying to bring housing solutions.
Randy?
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Randy Sneed. I'm the regional assistant with the Department of Local Affairs in the Valley. We are participating in the community level part of this assessment. So I've been trying to listen in on all of these, and I'm learning so much. And just here to listen. Thank you.
We had a few come in, see if I can get the camera over here, into the room while we were having technical difficulties. So we'll let them introduce themselves in the back.
I'm Rhonda Lobato with local business owner. We'll say that for now.
Do you want to say?
Many hats in the community.
Yeah. Do you want to say a little bit about why or your interest in housing?
Sure. Yeah. So my daughters and I are a new business ownership in San Luis called Lupine Luna. We are restoring or remodeling the old Maloff building downtown Main Street with some housing units on the upstairs area and possibly a phase 2 with the back end of the lot for apartment buildings.
Awesome, thanks.
I'm Feliciana Lovato. It's my mom.
And I'm Feline Lovato, so I'm a part of that too.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And then we did have Christopher join us on the phone.
Yes, I'm Chris Hall with RMSCR, CEO for RMSCR. Thank you.
Camille, oh, she's still connecting. Camille, are you connected?
Connected, and I keep having difficulty. I'm Camille, and I am in Huerfano County. I have also sat in similar meetings in Los Animas County or Trinidad. And so I'm just kind of interested in what different municipalities are doing to address this housing issue in Southern Colorado.
Okay, thank you.
Did we get Andrew?
And Andrew?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Andrew Coburn with Urban Rural Continuum, part of the consulting team working closely with Willa on the regional housing needs assessment and also the community assessments, and excited for the conversation this morning.
Thank you. And then I'm Dawn Melgaris. I'm the director of the San Luis Valley Housing Coalition. I am the one that helped commission this study along with a large group of business owners and leaders from around the San Luis Valley. We kept hearing several different needs for housing in multiple communities, all a little bit different. So we wanted to collect the data, and we raised some grant money and some jurisdictional donation money to make this happen. And we've now been in all 6 counties and 14 communities. This is our last stop for this round to get the data collected, and then we'll work with Willa and her team as well on action planning and how to put the data into place. My organization offers home rehabilitation and down payment assistance to resident-owned properties, as well as several other programs like household well water if you're not inside the city limits, and tool barn, tool rental, and apartment complexes. So we have our hands in lots of different affordable housing venues all over the valley, and we are looking to expand and help other communities as we grow. And so we're doing this housing study to help see what that need is.
Awesome, thank you, Dawn. All right, so I'll jump into the brief presentation, and then we'll have our discussion. So as Dawn mentioned, this is a 6-county area. The overall study was the 6 county areas, and it highlighted the big themes and trends. So I'll just give an overview of those, which are these 8. Oh, sorry. Before I go to that, go ahead. Yeah. The full report is available on Dawn's website, and if you want to dive deeply into the numbers and the data and the method of how we came to our conclusions, that is available there. And I encourage you to do so, or to ask follow-up questions for us if there's something that you don't, that you need that isn't there. So when we look at why is there a housing problem across the valley, we found these particular issues are all kind of conspiring to around your challenges. So as you all are observing in your community, home prices are increasing. To purchase is up 66% since 2009. Rents are up quite a bit as well. And in some communities, rents, it's just, but they're both, the prices are up, but also there just isn't any rental housing. And that's very much what we see here in San Luis. High construction costs. So labor and materials for construction have both been escalating very rapidly, especially in the past 2-3 years. And that is kind of staying ahead of it being, even as home prices are going up, it's not profitable to respond to the need that exists in your community. And so we need public-private partnerships to address that in most cases, because the private market isn't responding. These two things together, are meaning that there's a lot of very high housing payments relative to what people's incomes are. So as people are paying more and more on their housing, it's stressing other parts of their lives and their budgets. And so about half of renters are paying more than 30% of their gross income, and about a quarter of owners. So that, that plays out in a lot of negative ways for people's ability to thrive here in general. Then forced commuting. So as you can't find a home in the community where you live and work, or you can't, or where your job may be or where your family may be, you are being required to drive further and further, and that's pretty expensive, both in terms of your actual cost of your vehicle and everything, but also in terms of your time and your quality of life. Then we can talk more, well, residential sprawl. So 73% of all the permits that have been pulled in the Valley are in the unincorporated areas over the past 10 years. So we have these beautiful little towns with a lot of infill opportunities and homes that need to be brought back to life, but where people are attracted to the cheap land in the unincorporated areas, and there's a lot of expense associated with actually trying to build there and serve there. So this is just an underlying thing that I think is part of driving where we're really focusing on the towns and wanting to find solutions that are close to where you can have businesses and where there already are schools and services and snowplows and et cetera. So the limited housing choices, you know, the inventory across the Valley tends very much to be single family and manufactured homes. And so the opportunities for people to have different kinds of housing in different phases of their lives, whether it's like a little grandmother flat or, you know, a townhouse for your first home, that just isn't very available in this community. And I think the opportunities to do second floor apartments and things like that here would be really great. Provisional homes is the issue of homes that are off grid. So that, you know, that they may not have all the things, or they may not have all the things that they need to actually have a certificate of occupancy. And then the housing stock being quite old, as you all are well aware. Another key demographic factor is just compared to the state of Colorado, what a large percentage of the population is over 65, and how we have this imbalance in our jobs and workforce, and a loss of people in the working age demographic. So then that kind of is exacerbated by the increasing prices and the lack of housing quality, because you can't necessarily attract and retain those employees that you want to have here and to keep as part of your community. So we did find employers are struggling to fill jobs, and that's part of where our research around how much housing is needed. So we did a lot of work with employers to get data and insights in the Valley-wide research. And when we asked employers about how they feel, or how the availability of affordable housing is affecting their businesses, there's a strong consensus that this is a problem. Very few employers aren't touched by this. So sort of our bottom line numbers, if we kind of cut to the chase, we looked at what would create a functional rental market, a functional for sale market that kind of started to stabilize those price increases and had enough movement to really be working. What's anticipated job growth, and this a really important dynamic in your community is employees who are retiring but plan to stay here. And when they leave their job, they don't leave their home, right? So the person coming to replace them then, or fill that job, needs a place to live. And so when we put all those factors together, we came to the conclusion that about 1,885 homes and apartments and all different kinds, any kind of housing type units are needed looking out 5 years. This is a big number. We don't expect to sort of tackle it all, but I think looking at each community and what can you do can help to chip away at this. So we took one approach of just spreading that number across all the counties based on where the jobs are located or based on where the households are located. And so, here in Castilla, if we look at job location, it would indicate a need of about 112. If we look at household location, a need of about 173. And again, that's a 5-year projection. I wanted to introduce this housing bridge, which is just a way to think about types of housing, price points, and this metric that all our funders use, which is called area median income. So we've illustrated sort of the percentages of area median income and about how much money that corresponds to for a 2-person household and what type of housing they might be needing. So, and obviously there's movement across these things. It's, this is a simplification, but in this area, there's a very strong need in the below 80% AMI. And then also there's a missing middle component. So the recommendations out of the Valley-wide study were, and I loved this because Jeremy totally beat me to the punch and said economic development and housing go hand in hand. And absolutely, if there's a positive synergy between the two, that's what's gonna drive your community forward and create that vibrancy that you're seeking. More housing is needed across a spectrum of housing types and prices. So there's no single hey, go do this one thing. It's it would be awesome to do some apartments. It would be awesome to do some renovations. There's a need for ownership. There's a need for rental. And very much one of the other themes is there's a need for small units, for places that a single person or a couple can live comfortably and affordably. Starting small and building on promising practices, in a community like this where there haven't been a lot of new building permits over the years or over recent years, making sure that we prove the market. And I think the example of the CRHDC project where they kind of missed the mark on the market a little bit, is a good example. Okay, what can we learn from that project? Let's try to get it right on the next one and not put a lot of both either public or private money at risk as we get started. We're one big valley. There's all these trends that are valley-wide, probably apply to most communities, but there's a lot of local variation too. I mean, now that I've been in 14 communities with Don, it's pretty amazing to see how special and different each one is. And so I want to make sure that and that's where I really am calling on this group to be oh, if we got it wrong for San Luis, let's course correct. This is just a draft. And I kind of got beat up by Crestone yesterday, I'll say. They had some strong opinions. And then, equity, diversity, and inclusion moving forward. So our housing, our funding, our approach to housing, how we regulate it with our local zoning, et cetera. Let's always look at that through the lens of, are we bringing people together and creating opportunity for everyone, and reversing anything historically that's caused segregation or winners and losers. So let's pause here and just say, hey, does anyone have any questions about this part of what I just presented?
The only thing I'd throw in, when all the demographic or all the little box slide.
Yeah.
Construction costs has gone up even higher post-COVID.
Yes.
Job issues post-COVID. There's a lot of demographics there that have gotten worse because of COVID. Yeah. Yeah, especially down here where talking to some of the construction business owners that are never mind material costs being through the roof, they just can't even get the materials now.
It's not a cost issue, it's a
availability
existence at all, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
We just did a small business relief fund, and a couple of construction guys were saying that where, they couldn't even get septic tanks to install, and stuff like that. So that issue's gotten bigger in the last year. Yeah,
thank you. I think that would be an important, just sort of say we have all these dynamics, and then COVID has actually escalated them. Yeah. I'm working on a project in Rifle. We're at the very end of construction and we were having a ton of trouble getting the appliances. And I think that's, yeah. So, and then being remote or far from an urban area exacerbates that. So, thank you. Anything else, questions or things we should add?
Anybody online have any comments on this section yet? Okay.
Cool. All right. Let's move into the key metrics for this community. So this is a little snapshot slide, and we that's in your draft report. Oh, and I have copies of draft reports. Right, you know. Let's this is beautiful. I don't have a, you guys willing to share?
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. So so this is, you know, just some of the basic kind of conditions here, and take in the metrics at a glance. So actually, you know, in terms of the mix of homes here compared to other parts of the valley, you do have more variety. That 27% is multifamily, just a little over half is single family, and then, you know, 18% mobile homes. There, you know, as we really tried to scour the resources for to find housing for rent and listings and understand what are the price points, we found nothing. We looked for 6 months and found zero. So, and I have there's someone on our team who's very good at turning over every rock and doing social media and every kind of listing she can find. So anything, you know, it seems like anything that's getting rented is by word of mouth. You know, one home sold last year for $120,000. Dawn and I did see one listing as we were driving around this morning, and there are 2 on the Realtor database. So about a quarter of homes within this town limits are vacant, and we're working on a more specific inventory of those. And then if we go kind of delving a little more into the need. So this lines up those area median income from the housing bridge that I showed you, kind of what that translates to in income, and then how many people in your community make that income and what they can afford to rent and to buy. So, you know, this is where we really want to focus on that, you know, below 80% AMI, and I even, you know, targeted it more towards below 50% AMI. But I think we can talk about, you know, I think this is more nuanced than the way I've just got the box right now. But I think, so if you just take the big hairy scary total need in the valley and allocate it to San Luis based on your population, it comes down to about 25 to 30 units needed over the next 5 years. And we're recommending leaning a little heavier on rental than on ownership, just as what we're hearing, you know, from employers, and that complete lack of availability, as well as what we're hearing on the challenges of people buying homes. So we can, and this is, you know, my cautionary tale about starting small, again, resonates here because this is a biggish number, you know, like 25 to 30. But we're not recommending sort of go for that all at once or go for that all on one site. Are there any questions about this? Another thing I would mention here is that as we look at the balance between the towns and the county and where development's occurring, I think there's opportunity to sort of make a case for focusing more in the towns based on that affordability and the services and revitalizing the towns. And that could drive up the sort of total need so we'll play around with that in our next iteration of the report. So potential goals and actions. Here's, you know, sort of brainstorming and from what we've heard so far, you know, the recommendations we're making. And I think this is where we'd, again, really like to refine it through today's discussion, because, you know, you may see the things as needing to be prioritized differently, or things that we've missed. So that acquisition and renovation of rundown and abandoned homes, this is a very strong theme in a lot of different towns. And it's been kind of cool to think about how an organization like Dawn's might help be a central sort of resource to get that going, and bring some of that expertise and leadership so that each town doesn't have to go compete for the funding and become their own expert. But obviously we'd want you to work very closely together in partnership. Promoting rental space above the commercial spaces. I'm really excited we have 4 people in the room, all with that in mind. And then expanding the use of existing programs. That's going to be one of our discussion points, because it seems like there's good opportunity there. The CRHDC and town-owned land really seems to present a remarkable opportunity, but I think it's kind of your looking down the road a ways once you've got some of these other things under your belt type of opportunity. And then we also had just like other things that kind of bubbled up, but they weren't fully formed as potential goals or actions yet. But if they resonate with you, let's definitely talk about them. So that kind of, I also had the question of, should Jeremy be listed as one of our local leader contacts? So that concludes the overview of your community. And I just pause here to say, are we on the right track? Like, what do you think of this? Is there anything else that we could be including to make this more useful to you?
I think we're on the right track here. I think both the whole, especially our Main Street area of being retail and residential, of course, benefits our downtown district. And then looking at the other parts of town, doing the backfill of some of these abandoned properties that are already, part of the concern that we've talked about in the past is if we do a brand new development or something, how much of a strain is that going to put on our current infrastructure? Where we already have some of these houses that are hooked up to water and all that type of stuff that it just need some renovation to it. I think going that approach is a good first step. And then looking at, the thing I keep thinking about is, we talked about it with the Housing Coalition, is that Indie Dwell. Some of the stuff they're able to do, especially with multifamily housing, with their building tech, that is affordable. And that's the other key thing is we have 2 extremes, it seems like, in Costilla County of, housing, where we have a lot of secondary homes, especially in the north end of the county, up in Forbes, in that area. Here on the Mesa, there's a mixture of secondary homes also, and then subsidized housing, and not much in the middle. And trying to fill that gap, I think, too, is doing some of the backfill would help fill that gap.
Absolutely.
I think we agree. I think on our drive today, we were seeing that, like, you guys have a great housing authority start, like lots of different options for the subsidized housing. But where you're missing is that probably like 60% to 120% AMI on the rainbow there, that starter home or that downsizing home, those rentals for the teachers, your firemen, your policemen, those sorts of things. That's kind of where your gaps are. And it was very visible just on our drive today.
Yeah, I think we might want to make this more nuanced to be like, almost bring a rainbow to it. Like, we've got some, a certain need at the below 50% AMI, but we've got an economic development need that's in the next tier. Yeah.
Because we're sort of at that chicken and the egg scenario here of jobs to housing. Like, if we all of a sudden had a bunch of jobs available, we don't have housing to support those employees. And then we don't have housing available to increase jobs. So I know the school had, or a teacher, the story I heard was like 3 or 4 teachers are sharing an apartment on Main Street because they just couldn't find, there's not enough housing.
And I think that's where they start small. You start 4 or 5 at a time in rentals and apartments. And then as the jobs filled and the units filled, then you keep going so that you're not outpacing your jobs and your housing. You're keeping them kind of in tune with each other.
I think there's another opportunity too for accessory dwelling units, where people may have a home on one lot and own the second lot, to be able to add to their home for an apartment, to make some extra money, to, you know, fulfill that need for rentals as well, but then finding the funding for them to be able to do that, you know, and show them how they could, you know, pay for it through rentals and that kind of thing, that might help, you know, in not only for their own economics, but other people needing a place to live.
Thank you. Other thoughts or questions?
Not right now.
Okay.
Anyone online
Anything,
have
Susan?
anything in this section?
I had a quick question, just to clarify the, you know, kind of the missing middle housing, and we're talking a lot about teachers. Are we finding that they're mostly single occupancy or more family style homes that are needed?
Teacher wise, it's majority single.
Okay.
All right, let's go to our discussion then. So starting with goals, I'd love for you all just to think out, if, you know, kind of envision yourself 5 to 10 years from now. And if we had really hit it out of the park on housing, what would be different here and what would we have accomplished?
I think somehow having people have that opportunity of going from subsidized housing into a starter home or something, taking that next step up. I think, because right now it seems that there's not a lot of opportunity for that.
So that first time home for
Yeah.
sale. And for the teachers, are you thinking most of them are probably gonna need long-term rental, like 1, 2, 3-year rentals where they're not having to bounce
Well, that would,
around?
yeah, that'd be nice.
Do you,
Just understand.
yeah, do you see them, if they had housing, they had opportunities for home ownership? Would that, are you hearing that would be something that maybe some of them would stay or look into?
I know of one specifically right now that has talked about buying a home, but it's hard to say. In a rural setting, like I said, it's hard to get teachers anyhow. And then when you throw in the lack of housing, that makes it even more difficult. So you try to do as much as you can to sell your school and sell your community. And, you know, for some of them, yeah, I think it is okay to know that, or it's good to know that I have an option either to buy or to rent. But for the most part, most of them coming in, it's looking at renting. I mean, we have an applicant right now, highly qualified, good applicant, but she has 3 dogs. And we've put out all kinds of feedback. And we're just having a hard time finding some.
Yeah.
And we hear pets are hard everywhere in the valley. It's a hard one for us to even conquer in Alamosa. Like, it's just landlords don't want pets because it's an increased cost to them in the end. And so we haven't quite figured out how to help. So then some type of either school-owned property or a landlord that understood that would be ideal for you guys.
Because I can tell you, most of them that are coming in that are just single, they're bringing a pet, whether it's 1 or 2 or a cat and a dog, or you know, multiple of each.
Okay.
Yes, I had to twist my landlord's arm to have a pet. You know, and you see it in other places where, you know, up on the Front Range or whatever, they'll charge you a pet rent to help offset those costs. But at the same time, then, you know, we already have an issue with costs, and then you're adding another one on top of that, and it gets more difficult also.
It does get difficult.
Do your teachers leave for the summer and then come back in the fall, or they stay continuously?
For the most part, they stay. There's some that take off, but I think it's very rare.
other, like,
Dawn and Willow, we do have a hand up on the Zoom call.
Thank you. Christopher.
Okay, can you all hear me fine? Okay, good. I think what will be a huge success, I know we have 5 to 10 years, maybe 1 to 5 years, we can take a look at all of the condemned or abandoned properties and put a plan together, one to see how many that there are available that are condemned or abandoned, to allocate some as for rental, and then probably some as for purchase, because some may have the need to purchase, but then some, of course, may have the need to rent, because there is an infrastructure issue that we have to get in place to be able to handle new build construction. So since then, we won't have to deal with the infrastructure piece right now, which that's going to take time as the city is able to deal with the infrastructure to handle new build. We probably need to look at the abandoned properties first, renovate those to have some allocated for rent, and then some allocated for home ownership. Then as we work from that, and then we could jump into now, how do we deal with new build of apartments or new build of homes?
And that's been a common thought across all of our listening sessions is let's start with what's already here and bring it back to use to test the market, and then move out with new construction towards the latter end of the process. So I'm glad you're picking up on that as well, because it definitely is something that we're hearing from communities.
So
yes. Okay, I'm sorry.
You go.
I was going to say yes, especially because as we talked about earlier, dealing with the COVID issue of availability of supplies for building material, we're going to run into some issues for renovation, because you're going to need still some of those supplies in itself that are not going to be available and hard to get to, which is really creating another huge hurdle and obstacle that we have to overcome.
Agreed.
So I'm curious about, while we're talking about abandoned homes, do you guys have insights about how, is there any opportunity to sort of catch a home right before it gets abandoned? You know, what are the sort of steps by which maybe it's gone down a little bit, but it's still being occupied, and how could we save it or like, is there anything that community groups or, you know, Dawn or others the Housing Authority could do to help intervene before it is unoccupied, or at that point at which it becomes unoccupied?
I think that the majority of the homes in the town of San Luis that are abandoned are older adobe homes that were occupied a long time ago, and the kids have moved away. The parents have died, and they just kind of hold on to those properties for sentimental reasons or for wanting to come back someday after they retire. Because you don't see very many of those homes come up on the market.
Does having a key to the mountain play a factor into that too, do you think?
No.
Okay.
We haven't seen that be a factor at all in the sales of the.
Well, I see, like holding on to the property to keep the key, to keep access up there.
Well, it shouldn't, because the key access to the mountain is specifically for gathering wood for your residents in the town or on the property. So it shouldn't.
Keyword being shouldn't.
So if you don't live there, it shouldn't matter. Right. But do you, so do people end up realizing their dream of moving back to retire? Or like, I wonder if we know yet.
I think some do, but very many.
Do you think that they're not, because by the time that dream gets here, the house is too far gone?
Yes,
Okay.
a lot of times,
So
yes.
we had an idea pop up yesterday, and we had funders on the phone yesterday, that what if there was an ability to come in with funding for rehab so that it could be made a rental property if an organization would step up and do some management, because if you're out of the area, it's gonna be hard for you to manage. And if we put some restrictions on affordability and that sort of stuff, so the house stays maintained until you're ready to come back and you're making an income off of it. Do you think that would be something this community would be open to?
I'm sure,
Maybe.
I think to a degree, yeah, if you're showing that they can generate revenue while they're still living like up on the Front Range, and whatever organization's managing it, and it's not a burden on them, I think there'd be people that would take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Because I know there are people that live up in Denver that are renting their homes down here on their own. In Cuba.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, that was a thought that came up in La Hera and Antonido yesterday, that a lot of the homes become abandoned because the kids are out of town, like you're saying, and parents have passed, and to manage a rental is too difficult from that far away. And there's not a lot of resources in town to help them with the management side, or resources to help them make the house so it could be rented. So we were kind of looking in, could that be a possibility? Something we should look at in more than just that community.
Well, I think with a lot of these homes too, they're so old that, you need to go in and put new plumbing, new electric. Adobe is crumbling. The town purchased through a grant one home by the park to expand the park, and that house needs a ton of work. And so even just thinking about, and does it have asbestos in it? And does it have, so you're looking at a lot of money you have to come up with just to restore an old adobe home. And sometimes the whole roof or the foundation, because a lot of them are on rock foundations, you've got to figure out, okay, we got to push it up. So there's a lot of cost with some of these older homes. If they were built in the 70s, yeah, maybe there wouldn't be as much, but I mean, we're talking about 180 to 100-year-old homes that need a lot of work. So it would take a substantial amount of money on some of these homes just to get it livable again.
Hey, have you gotten some cost estimates on that one?
Not yet.
Not yet, because I think Dawn has a pretty, I'll call on her because she has a pretty cool success story from Antonido, where it was not as expensive as I thought.
Yeah, so Eloise, I'll get to your question in just a second. So we had a home, not an adobe home, it was sheetrocked. Homeowner, it had been abandoned, and new owner bought it for under $50,000 because the kids just couldn't deal with it. It had been sitting abandoned for 4 or 5 years. We went in to do just basic renovations to start to make it habitable again, because it needed flooring, it needed cabinetry, it needed electrical, it needed plumbing. And when we got in there, we found it had lead-based paint and asbestos. So we pulled our team together, and for about $56,000 was able to go in and remediate, put new flooring, do some new kitchen cabinets, make the kitchen or the bathroom bigger so it was ADA compliant. Just do some basic things. We were able to get Energy Resource Center in there to put some insulation in the ceiling, replace some windows, fix some doors, and their money was all granted, and just kind of working together. So all together between the two organizations and the homeowner, we had a little over $100,000 into the home. The client was able to move out of rent assisted housing into her first home. Probably wasn't what she envisioned when she first bought the house, because it did take about $16,000 for remediation costs. But she has a livable home. It's a 3-bedroom home, and it's back on the market after 4 years sitting vacant. So financing is there, possibilities are there, bringing in multiple organizations to make it the work at the price point you need, because with all of that, she's still paying the same amount as she was with her rent assisted unit. Because of all the different resources we were able to pull together for her. Now that one is owner occupied, so there's a lot more opportunity. We don't have a landlord situation figured out yet, but there is opportunities out there if we know there's a need, because we can't get the funding without knowing there's a need and the possibility of the need being utilized if we could come up with the funding.
We drove by it yesterday and it's a cute little, I mean, it's like a little bungalow thing and it's on a block with several other abandoned homes. I was like, I hope the word gets out. Yeah.
Eloise, you had a comment here?
I do, thank you. Going back, and I enjoy the conversation that's taking place. So just to go back, and the question was asked, how do we catch a home before it becomes abandoned? And as you had mentioned, that's a point that's kind of been a thought that's been a common thread through all of these types of listening events. And I had given it some thought. And one of the things that I'm thinking of is the county assessor, your county treasurer. As soon as you have a year or maybe two, and again, you'd have to formulate it, but a period of time where real estate taxes are not paid, that might be an indicator. The other thing is double that with, if the taxes are not being paid and there's an out-of-state mailing, an out-of-region mailing address for ownership, those may be two triggers that may, and again, allocating resources, and I realize that it might come down on the county, but maybe through this property management type service, go out to the property and at that point, see, is it occupied, yes or no? And then at that point, start with, I'm gonna say contacting possibly the owner and seeing what kind of solutions could be offered at that time, or even getting an idea of what their intent is for the property. But I'm thinking that might be a way, using county records to identify homes that have the potential of going abandoned. So I wanted to share that thought.
Thank you.
I do know watching assessors records and stuff is something we just started doing at the Housing Coalition through the housing study. And I know Rhonda, you could probably help me a lot on this too. But because the assessor only goes out like every 3 to 4 years, right? Like, is that about average? I know counties are so large, it's hard to hit every home
Well, I
consistently,
mean,
so.
the town of San Luis isn't very large, so everybody knows who owns what house and who's the potential for abandonment, I'm pretty sure. The tax lien sale advertisement is, I mean, that, yeah, take a look at that. But for the most part, the abandoned homes have been abandoned for quite some time. And you know who the owners are, you know who their families are. They don't want to sell.
And they're probably paying the taxes because they don't want
And
to
they're
lose
paying
it.
the taxes. Right.
Because it's that sentimental value.
Right.
So I
Or
know
you have
in-
like 5 family members that have to sign off on the
something.
sale.
Yes.
And you'll have like
That's true.
one holdout.
Right.
Lots of errors, yeah.
Well, I'm intrigued though, if they're paying the taxes, that seems to me like maybe that idea that of bringing, like, that's significant that there's that investment, right? That idea of like, well, let's try to retain their ownership of it, but bring it back into the rental inventory.
Yeah.
Might be.
See, and I think that for Antonido, probably totally different story there.
Right.
But they're not paying the taxes.
If I remember
Yeah.
right from my years of title research, most of your tax lien, people not paying your taxes are your vacant land.
Yes.
Up in all these subdivisions where your Grand Ranches, San Luis Valley Ranches and those, where they buy them thinking they're gonna come out and build and then they never do. I remember doing all those searches year after year. So
We miss you.
I'm sure. We used to do hundreds of them, and it very, very seldom did we do one that had a home on it. It was almost always vacant land in Costegan County. Rio Grande County, Conejo County, totally different. It was almost always a home. Very seldom was it vacant land. So I think in some counties that definitely is a great idea, and we can utilize that. I think in San Luis, it's going to be more word of mouth. It's going to be more that somebody knows somebody who passed and they know who the kids are, and how do we get the bug in their ear at the appropriate time, so that they don't feel someone's pushing them, and let them know that opportunities are out there.
Sounds like that somebody might be around.
That's my other hat.
One of several.
Well, and I think between you and, you know, the clerk's office, Nay, because then she could see death certificates and stuff coming through, and those changes in title before they get to you guys, might be able to put something together where somebody's notifying me or whoever's going to have that program to say, here's one for you to watch, you know, just keep an eye on this one. And then we could work on how do we watch those homes and how do we help your community in that way.
And I think also to that point of starting small, it's not like we need to track down every single one. I mean, I like the recommendation, I think from Chris, that we form a plan, but if we can start with one and have a success, then, you know, the next year it might be another one or another two.
Well, and if you start seeing success, then people are going to start watching it too. And they're going to start reaching out and going, hey, do you know who did that? Like, I want to be part of that. If it's something they're interested in as well.
Totally.
So great ideas.
Yeah. Any other comments on the phone? I think we should move to our land and partnerships discussion. And for the context of San Luis, I want to change this to buildings, land, and partnerships, because I think that you know, all of our discussions so far revolving around, we're not quite ready to go build new. But I also did want to make sure we capture, I know the town owns land. Jeff, you mentioned, sorry, Toby, you mentioned that the school owns land. So yeah, let's just jump into this one.
So just really quick, Andrew has messaged me that Andrea Trujillo with CRHDC has joined our meeting. Andrea, would you like to introduce yourself really quick, please?
Andrea, thank you so much. Your timing's excellent.
Hi, Dawn. How are you? I was going to say, I just hopped on. I've been here in Alamosa pretty much all my life and just started here at CRHDC. So I'm learning quite a bit, working with Ty. Ty's not in today. So just kind of happy to like start learning about everything and really start helping the community where I can.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And Andrea, you're the new, what's your title? Loan specialist,
lending loan specialist here at CRHDC.
And you're helping to bring about new like first mortgage opportunities, correct? So for those that are wanting to buy a home, then they could come to your organization for those needs, correct?
Yes, for first-time home buyers, and then we're working on refinancing as well, along with some other areas that I'm not quite familiar with, and feel like Ty would be better able to describe those, but those are things that are a work in progress right now. So we're definitely looking at helping the community in various ways.
Thank you. I just asked because the part of the conversation you missed a little earlier was that financing the purchase of a home is difficult in communities because of income levels. And I know CRHDC runs some great programs like the USDA first time home buyers where there's 0 down payment and some other opportunities that could help and benefit that. So we're really glad you're able to join us today.
Awesome. Thank you.
Super. So would anyone like to jump in with your ideas or thoughts about buildings or land or things that this is where we can kind of hone in on what's a specific project we want to pursue, and then what are the things that we already have and what are the things that maybe some of the things we might be missing to get there. And for the Lupine Luna group, we'll be really doing this in depth this afternoon about their building. But I think that in the introductions that some other ideas bubbled up. So yeah, who would like to speak?
I know one of the ideas we kicked around was creating a program that we had a local contractor that would provide apprenticeships for kids coming out of high school to learn the trades. And then that group would go help these folks that need their houses fixed up, which would save them money down the road with construction costs. You know, yeah, they would have to buy the materials, or we could help with the materials, but create a program where you're training the kids as well as helping out the community. So I've had that in my head. I've been asking around, can we find grant money to create that program?
Talk to Chaffa, please. They're bouncing that idea right now.
Right, I talked to them last year, and I know he said there might be some opportunities, but if we could do that, then that would help bring the costs down for the homeowners that don't have it to fix up their homes or to renovate or that kind of thing, but they could be used for training the kids.
I think they just released their request for ideas, like last week.
Okay.
So reach out to Jeff. He's going to be in town this afternoon, but they just put out their request for rural rehab funding opportunities, and they're wanting to hear what ideas communities have on how to put that money out there in the community. So, and that's one that they brought to me last year, the year before. So if it's really something you guys think would work around here, now is the time to reach back out.
And I'm curious for Toby's take on that one, because so in my kids go to the Gunnison Watershed School District, and they have, it's called the SOAR program. I can't remember the acronym, what it stands for, but they have built now, it's in high school, they do design build, and they've built 4 homes for teachers. They did a little house, and then they did a triplex, and now they're going to do a duplex. And it's been pretty cool. They work with a local builder who's really passionate about it, and then the trades teacher is in the school. And I mean, that's just been going for 4 or 5 years. But it's gotten some pretty, I mean, like it's very tangible then, because then the district's using the home when they hire, and for all different kinds of teachers and other staff.
Yeah. I talked to the superintendent of Salida, because I think they do something similar.
Yeah.
Someone had turned when we tossed around trying to figure out housing since I've been here. And his name's Gibbon, but they don't have to wait till the kids graduate. You can do programs with them in the school, and then some of those kids come out at certain levels. So
yeah, I
don't know about carpentry, but a district I used to be in, Canyon City, their auto shop, kids are coming out with ASC 1, ASC 2 certification upon graduation.
Well, when I was,
and they do also a program called Home. Theirs is Home by Ed, but they do the same thing. They actually build houses from ground up.
Yeah.
And do all the majority of the work inside of those, and then turn around and sell it, and that money goes back into the program for the school.
That's the model, that's the Gunnison model too. They were doing it from the ground up, but I think the rehab might be less. I mean, to me, I was like kind of nervous. I'm like, oh, there's high school kids up on the, but they did. I mean, they totally did a beautiful job and pulled it off. But the rehab trades could be an interesting other thing. What were you going to say?
When I was in high school, there was a program called Building Trades, and the kids actually did go. They learned how to build, just about anything, and they built some local sheds in the community. They also would go and help people roof their homes. I know they kind of did that sort of thing. And then I don't know, somewhere down the line, by the time my kids were in school, it didn't exist.
Yeah.
But the guy that taught that, his name is Juan Trujillo. He lives in the community still. He's probably about 80, 81 now, but he's probably a resource or someone you could talk to about how the program worked back then.
That's cool. Can we,
and maybe not on the rehab front, it's more new construction, but there's this group out of Adams County on the Front Range called Colorado Home Building Academy, and they build panelized components of new builds, walls, roof trusses, and floor components and stuff that could be a really great addition to local trades here, but shipping in components of a prefab. That's all high school and right after high school.
That can
Well,
help with the supply
yeah,
chain too.
yeah.
One of the challenges with doing the restoration, especially with a lot of these old Adobe homes, is finding Adobe contractors that know how to do the work properly and stuff. We've run into that with one of our projects. That's been a big challenge.
And pardon, I should know this, but does the what are the boundaries of the historic district, or is it on an individual basis here? Because if there's another layer there, if you're dealing with.
Isn't it all the town?
It's pretty much, I have it in one of the files for one of our applications, but
Okay.
yeah, it's 142. It was initially at 142. I think it expanded
To
further than,
7th Street.
is it 7th?
7th Street.
Down to all the way down,
Not,
but I'm not sure how far.
well, I
east
think
it
they did
goes.
the original, which was to 7th Street. I don't know how far back it goes, but I think they added the rest of the town at
I
one
think
point.
I think the
Yeah, the whole
town,
town.
most of the town
Is
it falls under it.
So that's both another challenge and opportunity. It's if you came out of that knowing how to work in an historic district.
Because there's a bunch of tax credits and stuff for historic restoration stuff. And then on the commercial side, because we're in an enterprise zone, there's tax credits for, restoring abandoned vacant buildings and all that type of stuff too.
Yeah.
But my thing is what you were talking about over there in Antonito with that house, and the house that you guys have, that could almost be like a guinea pig type project here to show what can be done with the resources that are available. Because I think a lot of homeowners just don't know what's out there for them, and getting the word out for some of this restoration stuff or rehab, and with what you guys offer, with the and then with what ERC and stuff like that. Yeah, there's a lot of, and then also now in Costilla County for commercial real estate, we're in the CPACE program also. And
What's that?
it's a Colorado, or Susan, you can probably talk more about it, but it's dealing with energy efficient upgrades to commercial property.
And the loan goes with the building, not with the owner. So you make a loan and it's assessed through the taxes, it's paid through taxes. And so if the owner who owns the building leaves, that loan goes with the building, not with.
Oh, because it's by taxes, not by monthly mortgage.
Correct, yeah. So
So
then.
there's no out-of-pocket cost to the owner.
Yeah, no out
Or
of pocket.
upfront cost to the owner.
Right, correct. So it looks like a pretty neat program, but I think I remember that the building has to be worth like $167,000 before you could get the CPACE.
Well, and it's only for
Pre or
commercial.
post rehab though?
I'm sorry,
Pre-rehab or post-rehab, a value? Pre-rehab value.
Mhm.
Which right now in this market, you probably could do.
Yeah, it depends.
Because the property market is going crazy, but.
Because that can help with properties like on Main Street with the retail residential mixed use properties.
Yeah, so those are great. And that kind of leads us into our next discussion. Because we're talking about existing programs. So just a little bit about what Jeremy's talking about with the Housing Coalition. We have what's called the SFOO rehab, or single family owner occupied rehab. So the homeowner either has to be living in the home or will move into the home as soon as it's habitable. And that's the program we used with the house in Antonito. We are currently working on, that one goes 80% area median income. We're applying to bring it up to 100% area median income in January, like it'll take place in January. We are also working on an application this year to be able to put that into rental homes. And we talked with our funder of that program, Ann Chaffee, yesterday about could they help with that into rental homes as well. We also do down payment assistance. And this is where someone's trying to buy a home and they're struggling and they need that higher down payment because of maybe credit or income. Then we can come in and put down payment and closing costs into the purchase of the home at extremely low interest rates, sometimes no interest at all, and help them meet the gap of what their local first mortgage can't provide. And it's been able to help several people around the community that didn't think they could buy homes get into homes. And that program goes up to 100% area median income. So for a single person in Costilla County, they can make up to $51,000 a year, I believe it is, and qualify. And then the more people in the home, the more income that can be made, obviously. And then, like I said, the rehab will be that too. I think right now the rehab for a single person household is $49,000 and change. But we also partner with Energy Resource Center, which comes in and does weatherization. In some instances, depending on who has the electrical, they could do solar, but they can do like windows and heat and insulation, and those sorts of things. They have very similar, I think they're the 80% AMI and below income levels. And again, that's still $48,000 or $49,000 for a single person to qualify. So what happens is a lot of these programs, everybody assumes are really low incomes, like you have to be making $10,000 a year to qualify, and they don't realize they can qualify for them. And then the other thing that I'm hearing is that the programs take time to implement because we're not a bank, we're small nonprofit organizations. We work with very small contractors as well. We try to hire the mom and pop contractors with 1 or 2 employees, and then we have to wait on them to have the availability in their schedule. So it doesn't happen overnight, and sometimes that can be discouraging, but we're trying to figure out how do we better our programs, or what new programs can we bring along this same line to help communities like San Luis have better access to these resources. So this is a great segue from talking about these homes.
And how is the utilization here? Like,
for the longest time, Costilla County was probably one of our highest used rehab. They are the only community we have put solar into a non-traditional off-grid home on, because we can do that if there's a health component. So if the homeowners are on oxygen, we can help them with solar. It gets used a lot for septic and wells, for those living outside of city limits. We've used it a few times for those that were under the square footage, and we're told that they had to bring their square footage up to meet code, or if they're what we call overhoused. So if they have a 1-bedroom home with 4 or 5 people living in it, then we could bring on an extra bedroom or something like that to make it appropriately housed. Down payment assistance, not as much. I've done a few in my 6 years here, but most of our funds have been rehab funds.
And it sounds like mostly outside the
And it's almost always outside the city limits.
Yeah.
It's almost always in the outskirts. We've had a couple with San Luis addresses, but they were outside city limits. And like I said, quite a few of off-grid homes. But we would like to see more happen inside the city limits because the purpose of the program is affordability, safety, decent housing, and those are most often found when you can stay inside the city limits because they have access to services and utilities and the things that off-grid living doesn't always offer.
I have a question on, what about building homes on vacant lots in the town, would you fund? Because I do know a few people that would like to build homes, and they own the land, but they just can't get a loan to build a home.
So I think, so we don't do new construction, but that CRHDC has opportunities for that. And I know they're working on new opportunities to fill that in down the road too. And I also got a text message. Oh, we've got another one. We've got a couple phone numbers. On the phone ending in 4614. Would you like to introduce yourself? Oh, I think they're having some issues. Randy, did you have your hand up?
I did, but someone beat me to that question. I just think that new construction, if you've got like a teacher interested in buying a home, I mean, all of our new construction seems to go into definitely not that middle that we need. It seems to be higher end, and you know, if people could build what they want because it doesn't exist with a little help, seems like it would be a good option.
It could be something, because I know like Chaffa and Division of Housing, they have some opportunities, but most of the time to come in and do new construction, it's subdivision or multiple homes at a time. But we'll look into that, Rhonda. We'll let you know as we're finding, and Jeremy know, like as we're finding those resources, we'll get them into your community so you guys know what they are.
So
not that it's the most affordable time to build.
Right.
But certainly driving around, it appears like there's a lot of really nice lots in town.
Yeah.
And
there's definitely some homes that probably at some point could come down, and that lot could be reused for new construction as well.
Right.
And this is another example from Gunnison. They were doing some programs where the town made lots available, and people could build their own home on it. And in our community, there's a lot of construction expertise. So local families could use their own skills to build their house. It was a struggle though, as prices have gotten, construction's gotten harder and harder to do. Became more and more of a struggle to build a house that was actually affordable for yourself, So I mean, I've seen that one example, and they did use mostly local banks to do the financing, but you had to have enough money to get that your bank would give you a loan. But the land was deeply discounted to sort of incentivize it.
One thing that we're doing with our down payment assistance, because right now it can't be used on new construction or even like putting up a modular, because it's considered new construction. We're working on getting some of those regulations corrected so that to help correct the market, because right now, especially with high construction costs, bringing in the modular or bringing in prefab is the way to go, because it brings the cost down. But then once it's considered new construction, it doesn't qualify for rehab because it's new, and it doesn't qualify for down payment assistance because it's not an existing structure. So we're trying to get them to, hopefully not this year's round of funding, but next year's round of funding, to do a couple of things. One, allow for ADUs to be on properties that use our program, because currently that's been a struggle, and we have that in the works. Two, allow it to go in on new construction when the down payment is still required, and it's going to help it be affordable. And the bank is doing most of the monitoring of that construction. Or allow us to bring our rehab in on new construction to put in septic systems and wells and stuff like that when they're needed, because some communities still have that need to put septics and wells in, even inside city limits or town limits. So we're listening to what we're hearing in these meetings, and we're taking that back to our grant funders, and they're taking it to federal government and local governments that run the money and saying, this is why your programs aren't being utilized in rural areas, because your programs this is what these rural areas need because of where they're located and what their resources are, but this is what you offer and it's not meshing well. And a third thing we're doing is we're trying to bring in new funding sources that already understand that because their focus is more rural and they're going to help kind of guide how we go in the future. Those programs, once we get them funded, they take about a year to kind of get off the ground. So we're looking probably the 2022-2023 grant season. We're hoping to have some of this stuff implemented that we're hearing this year.
So I just had one quick question for Susan before we move to our wrap up. How do you feel the rules of the road are with your municipal code? Is it pretty easy for people to do what they want to do? I mean, I know you don't have a ton of permitting you're doing, but like if someone wanted to build an accessory dwelling unit, like are the rules set up to support that?
Yeah, I would say they are. We just have setbacks, you know, where there has to be limits of how close you can build to the property line and those kind of things. We really don't have a building code as far as how you build. We just expect that you do it according to universal building codes.
Yeah.
So it would be easy for someone to request that. The only issue I could foresee is the fact of the zoning. You know, because most everything is zoned one single family dwelling kind of thing. So there might be issues with having to change the zoning for multiple units kind of thing. And that would be where the hang up would be. And is there enough room on the property and how are they going to access the property? So there could be, just depending on where the house is sitting, or if there's just a vacant piece of land that's its own, you know, piece of land, that would be easier with adding an accessory dwelling unit or adding something above a garage.
So
something like that.
how is that zoned though for the housing, for the housing authority? Because they have like multi-units in town.
Well, they're multiple, they're zoned for multifamily, but most of the lots are single family.
Do you think the town would be open to changing their single family regs that just read that ADUs would be available if the land meets these requirements?
I think they would.
And just do it as a blanket instead of one lot at a time?
Correct, I think they would.
And then my follow-up question is, do you think square footage requirements, because I know Costilla County has a 600 square foot and a lot of accessory dwelling units are not that large.
Well, we're different than the county. So,
Okay.
and we already have in our fee schedule that you can have a tiny home.
Oh, nice.
So that's already in there that you can do it. And it's based on square footage of the building permit. How big you're going to build it is what you pay, that kind of thing.
Oh, that's good. A lot of the communities we've been in don't have that yet. They haven't addressed or accepted the small tiny home
And we
concept
will.
yet.
Yeah,
So
we do accept that, and that's in the code.
And then, sorry, this is a little, we're getting in the weeds, we can talk after the meeting, but in terms of using the International Building Code, is that consistent, like the whole Adobes and historic preservation, is that all kind of like mesh together okay?
Well, you know, because we're a small town, we don't have an inspector.
Okay.
Okay, so we don't have anybody qualified to say, yeah, you're doing the Adobes right, or you're doing the building right. You know, it all comes down to funding. You know, we don't have the resources to hire someone that would go around and check. I mean, we do require when they put electric and plumbing, they have to have their certifications from, the state to know that they've done it properly. But as far as did they put enough nails in the board? No, we don't have the resources for a building inspector.
that
makes sense.
Yeah, that's
totally.
consistent. There's very few building inspectors in the valley. I think Alamosa, Rio Grande County, and I think that might be it. I think the rest of them, they have somebody go out to make sure it's a solid structure so you can get, Nahos County doesn't even give you an occupancy. You bring in your electrical and plumbing and they write you a letter that says you can move in. I know Costilla County does have occupancy, and I believe one of your resource officers goes out and looks and makes sure that it's a finished home and it's not gonna be a danger to have somebody living in there.
Yeah.
And or they may tell you if you need a septic or you need this or that for the within the county. Sawatch is the same way. We heard that they don't, depending on where you're at, the local municipality may have something, but the countywide, they don't. It's such a large county, it would be hard to get somebody across to all those areas all the time. So it's pretty common, I think, to
Well,
not see
maybe
that.
it'd be a good idea to have a partnership with the valley, that there was one building inspector that covered,
Mhm.
you know, and then, you know, we paid them for their services to come out and
By the
inspect, or that's
job.
something where we don't have to hire someone specifically for that. It's used all over the valley. Those services are used all over the valley.
I would bring that up to your county commissioners and
Mhm.
ask them to have that discussion at their valley-wide commissioner meetings. Because I think that's a great idea and I think it would be very helpful. I think the only thing that would prohibit that was that the counties that don't have building codes would have to adopt codes so that the inspector was working across the board on the same code valley-wide. Otherwise, it would become very difficult. And it's probably a good thing to have anyways. Whether they adopted the state code or the federal code or whatever they adopted, that each county would be on the same page.
Or you could use it in the counties that were interested.
Yeah, yeah.
So awesome brainstorming. Thank you for all of your good ideas and feedback. So we'll just head to our wrap up now, since we're right about at time. So we have, this was our part 2 of our listening tour that we covered all these communities. We'll be synthesizing what we heard today and updating this document. And we would love to have your comments if there's additional things as you're glancing over it or just thinking about what we talked about today, just to shoot those to us by July 23rd, please. And then we'll turn up a final version in early August and kind of move into the next steps around action planning and implementation. And so Dawn will have more information. She'll keep everyone in the loop on how to be involved in the next steps of the process. But your only homework today is comments by the 23rd, if you so wish. So yeah, thank you again for being here. And we'll see some of you this afternoon for the Lupine Luna work session.
Thank you. Anybody on the phone have any last comments before we sign off today? Thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate you being here and being at multiple listening sessions this week, because I'm sure it's helped you guys as much as it's helped us to have your input. And please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any additional thoughts or questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.